Every year, large enterprises allocate millions of dollars to fund internal security teams, assuming that capital translates into defense. Yet when these same teams undergo objective capability audits, they consistently fail. At the macro level, organizations typically rely on the NIST cybersecurity framework. It provides a high-level, flexible structure to identify, protect, and manage technical risk across the business. To formalize that risk management, they turn to ISO 27001, an international standard that strictly audits the creation of an information security management system. These two frameworks overlap heavily. An organization that maps its posture to NIST is already 61% of the way to meeting ISO 27001 certification requirements. But relying strictly on these macro-level policies creates a blind spot. A compliant organizational posture dictates what a security team should do, but it does not automatically execute the micro-level operations on the SOC floor. Drafting a solid governance policy is entirely distinct from possessing the measurable operational capability to detect and respond to an active intrusion. To measure those specific micro-operations, the industry relies on a diagnostic tool, the Security Operations Center Capability Maturity Model, or SOC-CMM. The 2025 Global Report aggregates data from these assessments and reveals a persistent structural problem with how internal teams evaluate their own performance. When teams assess their own operations, they report smooth passing grades, but external auditors document a fragmented, uneven reality. Teams operate inside a capability maturity gap, systematically inflating their defense until a breach proves otherwise. To understand where this gap originates, we have to break a security operations center down into its 5 constituent domains and isolate the exact points of failure. We cannot trust an enterprise's self-reported cybersecurity capability. It has to be objectively stress-tested. The SOC-CMM architecture operates by establishing precise criteria for operational measurement rather than relying on abstract organizational policy. It plots a functional security operations center across 5 core domains: business, people, process, technology, and services. These 5 primary nodes are supported by 26 granular subaspects, covering everything from use case management to threat intelligence. The model measures these elements on 2 distinct scales. The first is maturity, scored from 0 to 5, which evaluates how well an operational process is defined, documented, and optimized over time. The second scale is capability, scored from 0 to 3. This strictly measures the actual delivery of output and applies exclusively to the technology and services domains. When audited against these precise scales, nearly 60% of organizations discover they operate well below their target maturity levels. True operational resilience requires uniform maturity across all 5 nodes. A spike in one area cannot compensate for a deficit in another. When we look closely at the audit data, one specific operational domain consistently skews the self-assessment numbers upward. In global SOCs, the technology domain radically outpaces business, people, process, and services in both perceived and actual maturity. This spike is driven heavily by capital expenditure. Organizations purchase and deploy enterprise-grade CM platforms, endpoint detection and response agents, and SOAR automation tools. This creates the technology trap, the assumption that acquiring advanced security software equates to operational maturity. We see the consequence of this trap when we examine the lowest scoring operational domain, services. Specific proactive functions, primarily threat hunting and threat intelligence, consistently lag behind, actively dragging down the capability average of the entire SOC. An organization can buy the most sophisticated detection software on the market, but without highly mature analytical services to interpret the data, those tools sit underutilized. Simply possessing enterprise security tools does not grant a team the capability to proactively hunt and neutralize threats. This bias toward inflated baseline capability also varies significantly depending on geographic location. This chart displays average maturity and capability scores per region, sourced directly from the self-assessment survey data. Notice that respondents in Europe and South America yield unusually high maturity scores when evaluating their own operations. However, the SOC-CMM report notes that when trained third-party assessors audit these same regions, the data shows almost the exact inverse, with Africa and Asia demonstrating higher verified maturity. We get a much clearer picture of objective execution when we shift the analysis away from geography and focus on specific business sectors. Here, we see the breakdown of average maturity and capability plotted by industry. Highly regulated industries like finance and the public sector perform exceptionally well, while sectors with fewer compliance mandates like agriculture and software struggle to maintain basic capabilities. Heavily regulated environments enforce the rigorous operational discipline required to map closer to true ISO 27001 maturity. Another common misconception is the assumption that scaling SOC headcount will automatically scale enterprise security. The data shows a strict sizing threshold. Teams operating with fewer than 7 full-time employees structurally struggle to maintain even basic defensive capability. But after crossing that 7-employee threshold, the data hits a plateau. There is no strong statistical relationship between adding more analysts and achieving a higher maturity score. If a SOC lacks optimized workflows within the process domain, adding more personnel simply scales the inefficiency, yielding rapidly diminishing returns. Organizations cannot simply hire their way out of poor operational design to achieve a quantitatively managed SOC. Building an enterprise security operation based on internal estimations and software purchases creates a dangerous false sense of security. Closing the capability maturity gap requires a structured 3-step path to unify our core frameworks. Step 1. Deploy the NIST Cybersecurity framework to establish the high-level business risk baseline and identify the current organizational state. Step 2. Execute objective third-party SOC CMM audits. This identifies exact micro-operational failures, allowing teams to elevate their process and services domains to match their technology. Step 3. Take these proven, optimized operational workflows and formalize them to achieve certified ISO 27001 compliance. Because the ISO 27001 Annex A controls map closely to the 5 NIST functions, aligning these frameworks reduces operational duplication and ensures consistent reporting across audits. Macro frameworks act as the blueprint guiding the strategy, but objective micro-measurement is the only way to actually construct the operation. Relying on self-assessment leaves operational blind spots that attackers will inevitably exploit. Buying into the technology trap, stockpiling tools without developing the teams that use them, leaves the enterprise vulnerable to novel, undocumented threats. True resilience requires shifting capital investment away from endless software acquisition and toward proactive threat hunting and heavily optimized processes. Technology stops the knowns. Mature, optimized processes and services stop the unknowns.